Roots of Aggression, written by D.W. Winnicott, read for you by Burt Reynolds. The reader will have gathered from various odd references scattered throughout this book that I know that babies and children scream and bite and kick and pull their mother's hair and have impulses that are aggressive or destructive or unpleasant one way or another. The care of babies and children is complicated by destructive episodes that may need management and certainly need understanding. It would help in the understanding of these day-to-day events if I could make a theoretical statement on the roots of aggression. How can I do justice to this vast and difficult subject, however, while at the same time remembering that many of my readers are not studying psychology, but are engaged in child or infant care of a practical kind? Put in a nutshell, aggression has two meanings. By one meaning, it is directly or indirectly a reaction to frustration. By the other meaning, it is one of the two main sources of an individual's energy. Immensely complex problems arise out of further consideration of this simple statement, and here I can only begin to elaborate the main theme. It will be agreed that we cannot just talk about aggressiveness as it shows itself in the life of the child. The subject is wider than that, and in any case, we are always dealing with a developing child, and it is the growth of one thing out of another that concerns us most deeply. Sometimes aggression shows itself plainly and expends itself or needs someone to meet it and to do something to prevent damage from being done. Just as often, aggressive impulses do not show openly, but they appear in the form of some kind of opposite. It will perhaps be a good idea for me to look at some of the various kinds of opposite of aggression. But first I must make a general observation. It is wise to assume that fundamentally all individuals are essentially alike, and this in spite of the hereditary factors which make us what we are and make us individually distinct. I mean, there are some features in human nature that can be found in all infants and in all children and in all people of whatever age, and a comprehensive statement of the development of the human personality from earliest infancy to adult independence would be applicable to all human beings, whatever their sex, race, color of skin, creed, or social setting. Appearances may vary, but there are common denominators in human affairs. One infant may tend to be aggressive, and another may seem to show hardly any aggressiveness from the beginning. Yet each has the same problem. It is simply that the two children are dealing with their load of aggressive impulses in different ways. If we look and try to see the start of aggression in an individual, what we meet is the fact of infantile movement. This even starts before birth, not only in the twistings of the unborn baby, but also in the more sudden movements of limbs that make the mother say she feels a quickening. A part of the infant moves and by moving meets something. An observer could perhaps call this a hit or a kick, but the substance of hitting or kicking is missing because the infant, unborn or newly born, has not yet become a person who could have a clear reason for an action. So in every infant, there is this tendency to move and to get some kind of muscle pleasure in movement, and to gain from the experience of moving and meeting something. Following this one feature through, we could describe the development of an infant by noting a progression from simple movement to actions that express anger, or to states that denote hate and control of hate. We could go on to describe the way that chance hitting may become hurting that is meant to hurt. And along with this, we may find a protection of the object that is both loved and hated. Furthermore, we could trace the organization of destructive ideas and impulses in an individual child into a pattern of behavior. And in healthy development, all this can show as the way that conscious and unconscious destructive ideas and reactions to such ideas appear in the child's dreaming and playing, and also in aggression that is directed against that which is accepted in the child's immediate environment as worthy of destruction. We can see that these early infantile hittings lead to a discovery of the world that is not the infant's self, and to the beginnings of a relationship to external objects. What will quite soon be aggressive behavior is therefore at the start a simple impulse that leads to a movement and to the beginnings of exploration. Aggression is always linked in this way with the establishment of a clear distinction between what is the self and what is not the self. Having made it clear, I hope, that all human individuals are alike in spite of the fact that each is essentially distinct, I can now refer to some of the many opposites of aggression. For one example, there is the contrast between the bold and the timid child. In the one, the tendency is to obtain the relief that belongs to open expression of aggression and hostility. And in the other, there is the tendency to find this aggression not in the self, but elsewhere, and to be scared of it, or to be apprehensive in expectation of its coming at the child from the external world. The first child is lucky because he finds out that expressed hostility is limited and expendable, whereas the second child never reaches satisfactory endpoints, but goes on expecting trouble. And in some cases, trouble really is there. Some children definitely tend to see their own controlled, repressed, aggressive impulses in the aggression of others. This can develop in an unhealthy way, since the supply of persecution may run short and have to be made up by delusions. So we find a child always expecting persecution, and perhaps becoming aggressive in self-defense against imagined attack. This is an illness, but the pattern can be found as a phase in the development of almost any child. In looking at another kind of opposite, we may contrast the child who is easily aggressive with one that holds the aggressions inside, and so becomes tense, over-controlled, and serious. There naturally follows a degree of inhibition of all impulses, and so of creativity. For creativity is bound up with the irresponsibility of infancy and childhood, and with free-hearted living. Nevertheless, in the case of this latter alternative, although the child loses something in terms of inner freedom, it can be said that there is a gain in that. Self-control has begun to develop along with some consideration for others, and a protection of the world from what would otherwise be the child's ruthlessness. For in health there develops in each child a capacity to stand in other people's shoes and to become identified with external objects and persons. One of the awkward things about excessive self-control is that in a nice child, one who would not hurt a fly, there may come about a periodical breakthrough of aggressive feelings and behavior, a temper tantrum, for example, or a vicious action. And this has no positive value for anyone, least of all for the child, who afterwards may not even remember what has happened. All that parents can do here is to find some way of getting through such an awkward episode, and to hope that with the child's growth, a more meaningful expression of aggression may evolve. In another more mature alternative to aggressive behavior, the child dreams. In dreaming, destruction and killing are experienced in fantasy, and this dreaming is associated with any degree of excitement in the body and is a real experience and not just an intellectual exercise. The child who can manage dreams is becoming ready for all kinds of playing, either alone or with other children. If the dream contains too much destruction or involves too severe a threat to sacred objects, or if chaos supervenes, then the child wakes screaming. Here the mother plays her part by being available and by helping the child to wake from the nightmare so that external reality may play its reassuring part once more. This process of waking may take the child the best part of half an hour. The nightmare itself may be a strangely satisfactory experience for the child. Here I must make a clear distinction between dreaming and daydreaming. The stringing together of fantasies during waking life is not what I am referring to. The essential thing about dreaming, as opposed to daydreaming, is that the dreamer is asleep and can be awakened. The dream may be forgotten, but it has been dreamed, and this is significant. There is also the true dream that spills over into the child's waking life, but that is another story. I have spoken of playing, which draws on fantasy and on the total reservoir of what might be dreamed, and of the deeper and even the deepest layers of the unconscious. It will readily be seen what an important part is played in healthy development by the child's acceptance of symbols. One thing stands for another, and the consequence is that there is a great relief from the crude and awkward conflicts that belong to stark truth. It is awkward when a child loves mother tenderly and also wants to eat her, or when a child loves and hates father at one and the same time, and cannot displace either the hate or the love onto an uncle. Or when a child wants to be rid of a new baby and cannot satisfactorily express the feeling by losing a toy. There are some children who are like that, and they just suffer. Ordinarily, however, acceptance of symbols starts early. The acceptance of symbols gives elbow room to the child in his or her living experience. For instance, when infants adopt some special object for cuddling very early on, this stands both for them and for the mother. It is then a symbol of union, like the thumb of a thumbsucker, and this symbol may itself be attacked, as well as valued beyond all later possessions. Play, based as it is on the acceptance of symbols, has infinite possibility in it. It enables the child to experience whatever is to be found in his or her personal inner psychic reality, which is the basis of the growing sense of identity. There will be aggression there as well as love. In the maturing individual child, there appears another alternative to destruction, and a very important one. This is construction. I have tried to describe something of the complex way in which, under favorable environmental conditions, a constructive urge relates to the growing child's personal acceptance of responsibility for the destructive side of his or her nature. It is a most important sign of health in a child when constructive play appears and is maintained. This is something that cannot be implanted, any more than trust can be implanted. It appears in the course of time as a result of the totality of the child's living experiences in the surroundings provided by the parents or those acting as parents. This relationship between aggression and construction can be tested if we withdraw from a child, or from an adult for that matter, the opportunity to do something for those who are near and dear, or the chance to contribute in, the chance to participate in the satisfaction of family needs. By contributing, I mean doing things for pleasure, or to be like someone, but at the same time finding that this is what is needed for the happiness of mother, or for the running of the home. It is like finding one's niche. A child participates by pretending to nurse the baby, or to make a bed, or to use the hoover, or to make pastry, a condition of satisfying participation, being that this pretense is taken seriously by someone. If it is laughed at, then it becomes mere mimicry, and the child experiences a sense of physical impotence and uselessness. At this point, there may easily be an outbreak in the child of frank aggression or destructiveness. Apart from experiments, such a state of affairs may come about in the ordinary course of events because no one understands that a child needs to give even more than to receive. It will be seen that the activity of a healthy infant is characterized by natural movements and a tendency to knock up against things, and that the infant gradually comes to employ these, along with screaming and spitting and the passing of urine and feces, in the service of anger, hate, revenge. The child comes to love and hate simultaneously, and to accept the contradiction. One of the most important examples of the joining up of aggression and loving comes with the urge to bite, which makes sense from about 5 months onwards. Eventually, this becomes incorporated into the enjoyment that goes with the eating of all kinds of food. Originally, however, it is the good object, the mother's body, that is exciting to bite, and that produces ideas of biting. Thus, food comes to be accepted as a symbol of the mother's body, or of the body of the father, or any other loved person. It is all very complicated, and plenty of time is needed for a baby and a child to master aggressive ideas and excitements, and to be able to control them without losing the ability to be aggressive at appropriate moments, whether in hating or in loving. Oscar Wilde said, "Each man kills the thing he loves." It is brought to our notice every day that along with loving, we must expect hurting. In child care, we see that children tend to love the thing they hurt. Hurting is very much a part of child life, and the question is, how will your child find a way of harnessing these aggressive forces to the task of living, loving, playing, and eventually working? And this is not all. There is still the question, where is the point of origin of aggression? We have seen that in the development of the newborn infant, there are the first natural movements, and there is screaming, and that these may be pleasurable, but they do not add up to a clearly aggressive meaning because the infant is not yet properly organized as a person. We want to know, however, how it comes about, perhaps quite early, that an infant destroys the world. This is of vital importance because it is the residue of this infantile, unfused destruction that may actually destroy the world we live in and love. In infantile magic, the world can be annihilated by a closing of the eyes and recreated by a new looking and a new phase of needing. Poisons and explosive weapons give to infantile magic a reality that is the very opposite of magical. The vast majority of infants receive good enough care in the earliest stages so that some degree of integration is achieved in the personality, and the danger of a massive breakthrough of entirely senseless destructiveness is rendered unlikely. By way of prevention, the most important thing is for us to recognize the part the parents play in facilitating each infant's maturational processes in the course of family life. And especially we can learn to evaluate the part the mother plays at the very beginning, when the infant's relationship to the mother changes over from a purely physical one-to-one, in which the infant meets the mother's attitude, and when the purely physical is beginning to be enriched and complicated by emotional factors. But the question remains, do we know about the origin of this force that is inherent in human beings and that underlies destructive activity, or its equivalent in suffering under self-control? Behind it all is magical destruction. This is normal to infants in the very early stages of their development and goes side by side with magical creation. Primitive or magical destruction of all objects belongs to the fact that, for the infant, objects change from being part of me to being not me, from being subjective phenomena to being perceived objectively. Ordinarily, such a change takes place by subtle gradations that follow the gradual changes in the developing infant. But with defective maternal provision, these same changes occur suddenly and in ways that the infant cannot predict. By taking each infant through this vital stage in early development in a sensitive way, the mother gives time for her infant to acquire all sorts of ways of dealing with the shock of recognizing the existence of a world that is outside his or her magical control. If time is allowed for maturational processes, then the infant becomes able to be destructive and becomes able to hate and to kick and to scream instead of magically annihilating that world. In this way, actual aggression is seen to be an achievement. As compared with magical destruction, aggressive ideas and behavior take on a positive value, and hate becomes a sign of civilization. When we keep in mind the whole process of the emotional development of the individual, and especially the earliest stages,